Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm here with Jenny, and we're just going to have a little time with us. This is so fun, the chance for us to get to talk. And we're going to do this throughout this season, Unholier Than Thou, where we just get the chance to share information about ourselves, but also some of the things that we grew up with, and then just like learning time of ideas that even though we did not live near each other. We are in different parts of the country. We have these shared experiences that are so unique to the weird religious environment that mistreats people. And probably there are going to be listeners that hear this and they're like, "Oh, I maybe wasn't a part of the Baptist church growing up, but I had some of the same stuff." So today we're going to be talking about the ABCs of a cult. And we're going to scatter in our talk about some of the episodes that we've had so far and are going to have that are just really exciting. We're excited for everybody to get to hear and then just be able to give little tidbits here and there. So I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited to get into it and talk about the different aspects of a cult and kind of what to look out for if you're
Mhm.
wondering, am I in a cult? We'll
Right.
tell you today.
Yeah. And I think this is important for our first time doing this because so far in our episodes, we've talked about like there's a certain language that comes with being part of these groups that you actually probably don't know when you're on the inside of it. And then you hear later and you're like, that is exactly what it is. And so you're living out the definition of it. And then you hear the label, the word of it, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's totally what it was. Like, for example, love bombing. Love bomb.
Mhm.
Where did you first hear that word?
Oh gosh, honestly, I think I first heard that word on a podcast that I was listening to about how to spot a narcissist.
Oh, hey, great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is like a classic thing that you will see in a cult. The love bombing initially, it's, oh, they're so happy that you're there. We just really love you, appreciate you. What can we do for you? Really making you feel like welcome and warm and cozy,
Yes.
that they actually really care about you. And then
Mhm.
you ultimately find that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually on a podcast about how to spot a narcissist. So, yeah, I was like, that is a very interesting term.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I have lived that out in multiple situations, but I first heard the word a couple of years ago when we were living near some people who were part of an actual official cult that's in the United States. And they were so nice at first. And it makes me really suspicious when someone is so nice at first. But I was
Mhm.
like, these people are just great. And Sean's, no, they're not. Something's happening. And they had tons of people like over all the time. And then they wanted us to come and be a part of it. And then they wanted to have all those people over at our house. And just the kindest people you've ever met, like so huggy. And what can we do to help you? How can we be here for you? This is going to be great. Like one of the gals. So I have a love-hate relationship with sewing. And one of the gals is like, I will teach you how to sew. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing because I would really like to learn. I don't know if you sew. Do you sew?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
Actually, I was a home ec minor at Bob Jones. So yeah, I learned how to sew, cook, entertain, all of those things. Because I wanted to
gosh.
get my MRS degree.
Right. Yes,
I
your
wanted to get my
MRS
MRS
degree.
degree.
Yeah, it's so true. I took one class of home ec in high school and we made a kite and an apron, and I did terrible at both. And but Sean's mom is an amazing seamstress, amazing. And so she had given me a sewing machine and like they lived half time down here and then up in Missouri for the back and forth for the winter. And so I'm like, I would really like to learn to sew and I can do all this stuff with Sean's mom. Here this gal was like, I will help you with your sewing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And the church we were going to at the time, I was telling him like the pastor, hey, we're thinking about visiting this other church. Like I was just open. Hey, our neighbors are so great. And they go to this church, blah, blah, blah. So then later I get a text message from him and he goes, that is a cult. And I was like, nah. And he sent me all these links. And I was thinking he's just being petty and rude because we don't want to go to his church anymore. And, but then I started looking it up, and like this group, there are specific steps of things that they do for the MO of
Membership
their what?
to become a member, you mean?
Their MO of like how to suck people in. And I guess you could say to become a member, but to reel
Okay.
them in, it followed exactly what was happening to us. That's where in one of our episodes I was saying, like, I told Sean I could be really good at this cult. I could. I'm like so good. Like all the things that they want us to do, like all the steps of stuff, so good at it. And but one of them, this word was love bombing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened. To test it out, I had let them know, I'm sorry I can't come to such and such event you had planned. And they always go after like the women first, or like the most
Vulnerable.
vulnerable, the most interested, the ones that will look them in the eye. And then because Sean was like, nah, this is not
Yeah.
right. They're too huggy and love.
Now, wait a minute. When you and I actually meet in person, I'm going to hug you. So don't think anything.
No, I'm fine with it. I'm not a very good hugger. Actually, I always step on people's toes, but I really try. And I'm getting better at it. I'd be like, and I never know where to put my hands when I'm hugging. And this actually relates back to the church, because growing up, you weren't allowed to hug like men. And so like the one arm side
Yeah.
on the side. So like you people on YouTube can see me if you know what it is. You lean away, your arms out,
Yeah.
and you definitely don't want your hips, or you're leaning like this is
Yeah.
the only part that touches right at your
Yeah.
shoulder, and your hips are further away
Right.
so that no pelvises get near
Right.
each other.
Yeah. Isn't that funny that like we're taught a certain way to hug the men or
Yeah,
boys growing up?
yeah.
It's, oh man.
I know the first time I had a full frontal hug from a guy was in college, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like there's so many muscles.
Oh my gosh, I love
Uh,
that.
So, anyways, with this cult, the love bombing, I decided to test it out. I told them, like, I'm not going to come to one of your events. Soon after that, I was just like trying to extricate myself from all of their hugs and love. And the one gal came over who did the sewing. She's like, Susie, I'm just so sorry. I'm not going to be able to see you anymore. And I was like, why not? Like, we could still hang out. She's no, if you're not going to come to church, like, I won't be able to help you with sewing. I won't see you anymore. And I was like, you live down, like, you live here in town. Like, you could come over anytime. She,
Yeah.
she was like, no, goodbye. And I'm like, what's happening? Like, this is
Yeah.
weird. But yeah, as
Yeah.
soon as you reject the love
Yeah.
they're offering their way, then things change.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a similar situation where you stop, you pull back, you stop going to the small groups, and
Yeah.
really those are just they turn when you really get into it, they turn out to be very clicky. And
Yes.
we would have small groups at one of the churches that my husband and I went to, and it'd be like, oh, this certain individual, there'd be several small groups, and they'd have this certain individual would be a leader of one of the small groups, and everyone wanted to go to that group. And it was never a small group. It was ended up to
Yeah.
always be like a large group.
Like
And it
you
was
have
very clicky.
40 or 50 people at that one, and
Yeah.
then two at the
Yeah.
other. Oh, you're right. The small groups. Those used to be called like Bible study,
Yeah.
and then it became like life groups or small groups. So it's
Oh
more
yeah. And then you
fun.
would find within those groups, there were cliques within the clique. It
Yeah.
was like, then you would not be invited out to a group dinner, and
Right.
you'd find out that 5 or 6 of the couples within the small group went out to dinner, didn't invite you, and you're
Right.
like, what's going on? I don't
Oh,
know.
I
It's
know.
just it's very like high schoolish where they isolate. And if you're it depends on your level of involvement. So
Yeah.
if you get involved, then you become part of the clique,
Right.
and then they want to isolate you from other people.
Yeah, that's so true. And
Isolation is a big key thing with cults, and I know even like how you and I were raised in the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church, we are taught that we have to be separate from the world. Like we
right.
have to be separate from anyone that essentially isn't within the IFB, and which is totally against what the Bible teaches.
I don't know if they ever use the verse all the time, in the world, but not of the
Of
world.
the world, yes,
Yeah, which
yes.
I've always wrestled with that. It reminds me of in the garage, but not of the garage. Like, what? I don't even know what it means, but that's the verse they use to be like, you cannot listen to that music or you're of the world. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, but it's like, where does it stop? Where does it end?
For anybody who's listening, I just spilled coffee on my shirt. So if you see this one on YouTube, you'll see that I have stains all over the front. But we
It's all
carry on.
good.
We carry on.
Yes.
So we have stuff like love bombing. I think another really good, and so love bombing, but then the way they react when you say no is
Yeah.
a huge part of it too. And then, and some people instinctively know, don't say no to these people because like they could cut you, or they could, they would just be so mean. And the problem is now you're like so needing them and you're like so attached to them and they just became such an integral part of your life
Yeah.
that isolated you.
Yep.
You
And
might
now
not
you're
have them.
dependent. Now
Yes.
you're dependent on them. So
Yeah,
then
exactly.
dependency is huge because then that allows control to come in. And so control is a huge part of being in a cult too, because they want total control over your life, what you're allowed to do, places you're allowed to go, things you're allowed to listen to, what you're allowed to
Mhm.
wear,
And read.
what job you're allowed to have, who you're
Oh,
allowed to marry, what you're allowed to teach your kids. The list goes on and on. And
yeah.
that is really, in a nutshell, how you and I grew up. We were told from what we're allowed to eat and drink all the way to what we're allowed to wear, what we're allowed to listen to, where we're allowed to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And also how we are allowed to live in our own homes. Like if our husband tells us we can or cannot do something, we have to submit to that as women. We
Yeah.
cannot question authority, and the husband is put in that
Mhm.
position of authority over us. We're not looked at as equals with our spouse. And that goes for the leadership in the church too. We're told that is the man of God, so to
Right.
speak. And
Yeah.
like he's
Yes.
on a higher level than everybody else. So you just have to obey him as if you
Right.
are obeying God. And that is
Yeah.
absolutely cultish. Those are all like trademark things.
True. I remember you hear from them. And the first time I heard someone say, God told me this, and then I was able to say back to them, God did not tell me that. Like it was very freeing, but a lifetime of God told me this, like, and then you're just supposed to do it. But once I started getting to where I'm like, no, God did not tell me that. And if I've got a relationship with him too. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that's just going to just give it to one person only.
Yeah. And the thing that's crazy is too is like I heard that a lot in my life as well. Oh, God told me to tell you that you shouldn't marry this person.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 21. When does God start telling me what
Right.
I should do with my own life?
Yeah, there's so much contradiction of, okay, so you had to do all the things, you ask Jesus in your heart, you get baptized, and then you're supposed to be filled with the Holy Spirit. But
Right.
obviously the dial's been turned down on that Holy Spirit for you. You can't hear the volume, where then it's just the pastor that he only hears God the loudest.
Right,
And then
exactly.
yeah, I used to lay in bed at night and just be like, okay, God, where are you? I'm listening, and my ears are all like, come on, say it,
Yeah,
say it.
I know. And they always say it's a still small voice.
Right.
Okay, let's turn it up because I can't
Yeah,
hear it.
it's still small voice. And then now that I'm older, I'm like, could that be schizophrenia?
Good. Or maybe just listen to your gut and
Yes. Yeah. Where it's not just only a still small voice. Like God talks in so many different ways to so many different people. And like in so many different ways, through nature, through others, but always with, I feel like, a very clear way of like rationality.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. We're
uh,
given an intuition for a reason. And
yeah,
I think that we are also given the ability to feel vibes and frequencies from people. And it's like that saying, oh, we're on the same wavelength,
yeah,
or I really vibe with that person. It's the same
yeah,
type of thing where you can walk into a room and be like, something does not feel right here. It's
yeah,
that gut instinct that we're given, that's your energy is not matching up with my energy. And so
yeah,
I feel uncomfortable. And I think growing up in the IFB cult, we are taught to not listen to our intuition, not listen to our
right.
gut, that we're not to listen to those natural instincts that we have
Mhm.
from our creator, right? But we're only told to listen to whatever the pastor says, that
Yeah,
the Holy Spirit or God tells him that is the will of God for our lives, or our
right.
husband will
Yeah,
of God for our family. As a kid, like, I remember sitting in the pew looking at these missionaries that would come through, or
mhm.
these evangelist families. And I'm sorry, but even as a kid, I could tell the wives were miserable
Oh,
and the kids were miserable. And you would
yeah,
see them march up to the platform, and they're all in their little matching outfits,
yeah,
and they all have to sing and play instruments and perform for everyone. And it just is, 9 times out of 10, I could tell, even as a young girl looking at them, I definitely don't want that in my future. And, or you'd be at a revival service and a guy would get called into the ministry, and his wife would be crying and
I
upset,
know.
clearly not
Yes,
wanting to go to
right.
Botswana or wherever the heck
Yes,
they were going.
yeah,
And he's just uprooting her and their babies and everything. And she
yes,
just has to go because he's the leader of the family, and she doesn't even get to question it. If he feels called of
right.
God,
Yeah,
the whole
right,
family's getting uprooted. And
right.
it's sad. It really is,
Yeah,
because these families are miserable, and then
yes,
the wives are living in a miserable situation. They're taken away from their homes, their families, everything they've ever known. Maybe they are even lucky enough to have a job or career, and they're
yeah,
just uprooted from that because the husband feels called of God to go
right.
do this thing over here. And I don't
It's,
know.
it's really tough. And it's so, again, it's so irrational. And where the idea of how this all pertains to cults, for some people are listening, they're like, oh, that's not really that much of a cult. But when you take into everything else, plus whether it's your husband that's the leader, or there is usually a leader over the church, or even a national leader, or something that you're following his prescription for life and how to what to do. And so, where here you got like your example of the husband and wife, and he's like, you got a revival, a tent revival, you're absolutely right. And he's, God is calling me to Botswana. And then she's the heck?
Yeah.
And there's no higher guy like pastor that's, dude, just you need to take some time and think about it.
Yeah.
That higher up pastor is usually the one pushing him to do that, pushing the family, squashing down the woman's opinion and
Mhm.
the children, all this stuff that God said to go. And then they're like encouraging that level
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
again, irrationality
Yeah.
sometimes. Where
Well, even within, we talk about the troubled teen industry on our podcast as well. Even within that, you have a lot of these people that were sent when they were kids or teenagers. Their pastor was the one who told them, send your son
yeah,
here, send your daughter here.
yeah,
And the parents have such just a blind, the following of this guy, this pastor, that they're just like, okay, he knows better than I do as a parent on how to take care of my child. And
yeah,
so they're just going to do it. And they send him to these places that are super abusive and very destructive to them emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. And it, like, really destroys a person within their childhood. And then that plays out in their adulthood. And it's all because they listen to the pastor, the pastor.
Yeah.
And then we talk to some people that were in the IBLP under Bill Gothard. And I sit there and think to myself, how the heck are all these thousands of families following this guy who isn't even married, never been married, doesn't have a family of his own, yet he is making millions off of these families who are blindly following his advice, his leadership, his doctrine
Yeah.
of how to raise a family, of how to have a marriage. He doesn't even have experience in any of that. It's
Yeah.
if that isn't a cult, I really don't know what is. That's like
Yeah.
very classic.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I completely agree. And that reminds me of another part of the cult, the ABCs of what a cult is, where they will then bash on other groups
Mhm.
out there and try to tell you that theirs is the only way you will be
Yeah.
successful. But success is not a word used in church or religion very much. It's blessed.
Yeah.
Blessed. I'm using my air quotes, people, where you are blessed, and that could involve like a new car, a better job, a good house. So many number of things are considered blessed. Kids, the amount of kids you have,
Mhm.
pregnancies, a wife, a husband, or whatever. And oddly enough, it's all like related to your own life. Like the blessings are never how you could end up helping someone else.
Unless it's a pastor that all of a sudden you feel led to give him your new car or led to give him your Christmas bonus that you got.
Yes, so true. And then you end
Yeah.
up giving the leader more and better things. And what ends up happening is there's like this hierarchy of stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the idea of bashing on other groups or ideas that are different from the leader's ideas, it's as you were talking about Bill Gothard and how he said to raise kids, right around the same time, there was Dr. Spock's way of raising a kid. And like, I just heard growing up, like, how dare this man come up with other ideas on raising a kid? What's funny is we were sitting here, I was thinking of Dr. Spock's name, and all I could think was Dr. Seuss. But no, Dr. Spock back in the 60s and 70s on how to raise
Yeah.
kids, that was more of the secular, which is
Mhm.
code word for of the
Evil.
world.
Evil.
Yes, evil of the world, not in the
Yeah.
world, where there is stuff that is happening that then this cult leader is like, I'm pointing out, I'm going to break down and point out all the way this other guy is really bad. So then you see how good I am. And then you feel compelled. I have no other choice. This is really the only way I won't be cursed. I got to do
Mhm.
it. It's crazy.
Yeah, another thing too is they break you down, and I like how you put it in some of the episodes that they'll reduce you to dust. They want to manipulate you and just tell you what a terrible person you are. You are not worthy. You have to deny yourself good things so that you can be exalted by God. You got to be down here so that he can lift you up. It's, oh my
Right.
gosh,
Yeah.
that's what a narcissist does,
Yeah.
honestly.
Right.
They break you down. There's a lot of similarities with cults that are also traits of a narcissist, like super classic traits of a narcissist, where they love bomb, they isolate you, they control you, they degrade you, and then they build you up.
Yeah.
These are all very classic of a cult and classic of the way you and I were raised in the IFB.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
just so crazy. Yeah, the
Mhm.
correlation.
Right. And once you get used to living this with in the church, then, like you said, the narcissist comes along and ends up, you live this out in your home then too.
Mhm.
And you're already like conditioned and trained to have those similar experiences within your home. And you think this is normal and natural and how life should be. And it's really not. Like you said, there's a lot
Mhm.
of irrationality that goes with it.
Yeah.
And that you are taught not to question because somehow your opinion is not as good as the opinion of others. And then hierarchy within the church is, I don't know, what do you think about? So within a cult, you start the basics where you've just been love bombed and drawn in like a fish on a hook. And so you're in here now. But then you, like you mentioned, with life groups or small groups, you have to be more involved to be able to be on the inside of that
Mhm.
clique, little group. So then, though, it goes from there to then the pastors, hey, I've noticed you've been doing a lot of great stuff. Would you
Mhm.
be interested in playing the piano for us, taking on
Yep.
singing in the choir, decorating for Christmas, and
Oh, you
playing?
just named all the things that we're told I should be doing. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And don't hide your talents. Don't hide your talent. That's like a big thing. Do
right.
not bury your talents. And then they also go to the parable in the Bible where Jesus talks about the talents. And if you bury your talents, you'll lose them.
And God will
Like,
punish you. You will lose them, and then somehow you will all of a sudden your fingers will get broken. You'll never be able to play the piano again. No,
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's extreme, incredibly.
Yeah. And that's another classic thing too with cults is that if you don't do what they say to do, they're going to make you think something bad is going to happen to you.
Oh yes, yeah,
And and that's another like manipulation tool that they try to, and they gaslight you. Oh, maybe you're not reading the Bible enough. That's why you're depressed. Maybe
right,
you're having problems in your marriage because you're not submitting to your husband.
yeah,
You're always the problem. It's
right.
never anyone else. And there's no accountability for men whatsoever. Or the pastor. No accountability for the
Right. Oh,
pastor for
I
sure.
know. And what's so interesting is that, like, for people who don't understand what this is, this type of level of cursing and blessing could be anywhere from, like I said, your fingers somehow will get broken and you can
Yeah.
never play the piano again. I don't know if you've ever watched Arrested Development. There's always this guy on there that somehow got his arm chopped off. If he did something, arm gone. And then all the them as kids were like, I will never do that again. And where all of a sudden some terrible thing will happen to you or someone you love. But it even goes up all the way. You start looking for like those blessing and curses, and they become stuff like, oh, I didn't get the parking lot space up close
Mhm.
to the gym or the movie theater or the church like I wanted. Like your car won't start one morning, there's a ton of snow or whatever. Like any little thing becomes a curse
Oh yeah.
or a blessing to your life.
Mhm.
And then you're like, see, it's working. Like somehow it's a magic genie, like God's a magic genie. And this formula that this charismatic cultish leader has prescribed is working.
Exactly. Oh yeah. If you get a promotion at work, God did that. You didn't do it, God did it.
And you're like, or a job, and you're like, I did a great interview. And then they were like, you're supposed to thank God. And then you're like, yes, but I also participated in that. And they're like, no, God's the one who did it. And you're like, I'm the one who had to sit there answering all those questions. My armpits are all sweaty. God's the one that did that somehow. As
Yeah.
opposed to the idea that God and you could possibly, like, he would care to work with you and think you're awesome too. No, that never happened.
Yeah.
It's just God alone. But then if the curses come, that is Satan
Right.
or God.
Or
Yes. Yeah. Add that part. You mentioned it in one of our episodes about, and the way you said it's so logical, like God is withholding his blessing, right?
yeah. Yeah, he's withholding it or he's punishing you because you learn in the IFB that if you are not in direct obedience to God, if you are a child of God, he is going to chastise you.
Yes.
So
Big
you're
time.
going to get a big old fat spanking from God
Yeah.
himself in the way of bad things happening to you. So you
Right.
have to, you're like, is this Satan or is this God? Is
Right.
this Father God giving me a
Yes.
proverbial spanking right now? That's what you got to figure that out, right?
And it's that's what you spend all your time like again laying there in bed and my ears are just like, okay, God, which one is it? Is it you or is it Satan? And you just become preoccupied trying to figure all this stuff out while you're involved in doing that. Then you have this leader. I call them charismatic, but sometimes they're just not. But they are doing lots of bad stuff on the side, and actually not even on the side, like out in view of everything. I call this carefully controlled blindness, where someone is manipulating the narrative and the situation around you to where you can't see really the bad stuff happening because you've been distracted by all these other little things that are minor compared to the major issues that are really going on. So, like,
Yeah.
the leader might be embezzling, he might be sexually assaulting any number of people, he might be murdering people, like my father. And you just don't even, you're too caught up in trying to figure out how to follow this formula for your own life. You miss it.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy too? I was just thinking when you were saying that, the closer that you get to the leadership in these cults, the more you're going to find out that they themselves are teaching one thing and living a totally different way.
Yeah.
And basically, the rules don't apply to them. They can
Yes.
have their cake and eat it too. And everyone else needs to fall in line. And I can tell you from my own experience that my ex father in law, who is an evangelist within the IFB, he would preach against all these different things. You shouldn't have a TV in your home, yet they had a television in their home.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I remember we had TV growing up, but I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies. I wasn't even allowed
I
to watch
know.
PG-13 movies. And I remember
Yeah.
when I married this guy and went to his house, and then we're in the living room and his dad wheels out this TV on a stand.
No
Like,
way.
it's on this stand with wheels. He takes it out of this back room, wheels it into the living room. Now, this is during VHS.
Yeah.
So he puts in a movie. I've never seen the movie. I don't even remember the name of the movie, honestly, but he puts in a movie. It's R-rated. The whole family's sitting there. And
Nuh-uh.
there were no, I was the only girl other than his mom in the room. So it was all
Oh my
boys and
gosh.
his dad. And we're watching this movie. I had never seen an R-rated movie.
Oh,
And a sex scene comes up, and no one's fast forwarding. No one is doing anything. They're just sitting there watching it. I felt for the first time I ever saw something like that. And I was mortified. I was like, this is really awkward.
yes. With them? Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah. And I couldn't believe that this was the same person that gets up in the pulpit and goes and preaches to all these churches and
Yeah.
in these camp revivals and in these tent meetings and stuff. And,
They're
you
really
know,
doing that. It's
screams and yells
laughable.
at everyone about what they should be putting in front of
Yeah.
their eyes and watching and having TVs and stuff like that. And yet, here they are
Oh my
watching
gosh.
this R-rated movie, mixed company. And I was mortified. I was like, you don't
Mm.
even live the way that you preach. So
Yeah.
respect was lost at that point. And I also, being a pastor's daughter growing up, like, I will say my dad and my mom, they were not your typical IFB pastor and pastor's wife at all. They were very normal
Good.
in a lot of senses. We hung out with a lot of other preachers and evangelists and missionaries because they would come visit the
Yeah.
church, and
Stay at
then
your
we would
house.
stay at the house, or
Yes.
they would
Yeah.
come and we would take them out to dinners after the services. And so you get to see a lot of these people on a more personal level. I can
Yeah.
tell you 90% of them are not who they say they are.
And we're gonna talk about that at some point. I call that Sunday suit and a smile. That is so fake. It's so fake. It's only for those times when you walk in the door of the church that you put on this facade and then you leave, jump in the car, and it immediately all goes to hell. And that is like so much of what the people that we've talked to on the podcast experienced in their life, not just in the church, but also in the troubled teen homes and stuff that were maybe not even just religious troubled teen homes. These are places that excelled at fakery and that carefully controlled blindness and turning the Sunday suit and a smile. So, anyways, for now, we're gonna end our show here. I think is a good place. Give people a little more info about cults. For myself, I am gonna go change my shirt because I still have water stains on there. But hope you all like want to listen in to what we're doing. It's really fun. Jenny and I are interviewing tons of people, and it's unholier than thou. And anything you want to add, Jenny, as we finish up?
No, other than the fact that every Tuesday, Susie and we try to jump on TikTok around 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. And we're going to be having more in-depth like interviews with some of the TTI survivors that we've had on the podcast. Each one will be somebody different. And a lot of this stuff like we'll record and then somebody will be like, oh my gosh, I should have talked about this, or I
Yeah.
should have mentioned that, or I forgot something that they wanted to say. And so we'll use that as a time for them to tell a little bit more in-depth detail, and also for you all to be able to ask them questions if you're curious about where they went or any experiences that they had. So yeah.
That'd be great. All
Yeah.
right, Jenny, we will see you next time. Thank you.
Bye guys.
Bye. Healing is a process, a journey to be experienced, not just a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.